I find that it's good to write something because there's so little written things in Singapore, especially from the sort of the practicing artist point of view. So I wrote this so that later I can pass it to whoever it is who wants. They are thinking of writing a book about the Poh Solo. Maybe this can come in useful as a reference. So I'm just reading from the text, the text. But the reason how Tian and I got on the same program is also by chance and mistake, because we thought that tomorrow is a holiday and the gallery is closed, so we shifted his talk to mine, which shortens my session, but at the same time I feel that it's quite relevant because I think Tian also represents some of the things that might be happening in the future in terms of Singapore art practice. Will the real Singapore art please stand up? It's my schizophrenia, it's my paranoia, it's my I don't want to be me syndrome, it's my I wanted to be naked but I was asked not to, so I'm doing this instead thing again. It's me, it's always been me. No, it's not me, it's my home, it's my country, it's my job, my mother, my family, and don't forget my CPF. How many questions do you wish to ask? The question mark again. That crooked hook that ends with a dot. Where did that come from? Once I commented to a friend how I am intrigued by the question mark and place it as the most important human invention. He replied, was it not created so that we can throw it away again? Why is art in Singapore so American? I was confronted with this question once when I was in Japan. I hesitated how to answer this. I felt that the questioner had no idea what she was talking about. First of all, she asked this question based on only one exhibition and one sighting of one installation from Singapore in a Southeast Asian group show in Tokyo, which seldom happens anyway. And to make such a generalization from just one sighting is just preposterous to me. It was downright arrogant, but at the same time I lacked the confidence to dismiss her, as there have been many works that I've seen from Singapore that strongly resembles what has been produced in the West. Could it be that placed next to a Thai artist or Filipino or Indonesian? Hey, how come I'm shivering? Sit down. Relax. Hungry, Could it be that placed next to a Thai artist, Filipino or Indonesian, it's hard to accept a Singaporean work that can be so urbane, devoid of any exotic implications. The developed world is inclined to view contemporary art from developing or third world countries. At this point, some Singaporeans may not like this adjective, like Singapore with various presumptions and preconceptions. The perception that the Singapore art scene is immature, derivative of Western art, hence lacking any historicity, is commonly held. Worst of all, this perspective is sometimes accompanied with a sneering superior complex. It would be advantageous at this point for the Singaporean to change the subject and talk about our world-class zoo instead. So, what is Singapore art? Mature, derivative of Western art, hence lacking any historicity, is commonly held. Worst of all, this perspective is sometimes accompanied with a sneering superior complex. It would be advantageous at this point for the Singaporean to change the subject and talk about our world-class zoo instead. So, what is Singapore art or art scene really like? Singapore is a multilingual, multiracial, multicultural society. Its present political definition only began 30-odd years ago. Hence, we have our idiosyncrasies of having new nationalistic tendencies and yet trying to keep up with the globalization that is inevitably going on all around us. Singapore is one of many global cities in the world. However, if we look at this list of global cities like Amsterdam, Bangkok, Tokyo, Seoul, Mexico City, Berlin, London, etc. All these cities are cities within larger countries. In the case of Singapore, it is a city-state. Perhaps this could be a major contributing factor to the often perceived tightness that this ship is being run by its captains. Some may find such a situation enviable, as it does seem to be steering a smooth and swift course. The Nokia Singapore Art 1999 professes to showcase visual art culture in Singapore. Some 400 artists are represented in the National Parade of Visual Art in the form of 26 exhibitions in 15 venues. It is designed to ensure, this I quote from Prophet Charles' article in the catalog, it is designed to ensure that the widest net is cast to capture the amplest extent in art production and reception. Such a manifestation does not necessarily just be a celebration of pluralism. Visual art as a visual representation of what Singapore is, and Nokia Singapore Art 1999 says volumes, or at least attempt to do so. Curiously, SAM's curator Ahmad Mashadi's reading and overemphasis on Saleh Jafar's entry in the curated section entitled Cultural Sinkholes shows the consistent social engineering of national identity via the state policy. In asking us to adhere to the political correctness of looking at culture from a racially delineated program in order to preserve purity, heritage and identity, hints of an inferiority complex, of feeling that we are less mature and sophisticated than the more culturally developed old worlds of Europe, and also more particularly to a glorious long historical and cultural linkage to China and India. However, when I look at Saleh Jafar's cultural sinkholes, it also seems to lead us into some unknown vacuum. But I wonder if both artist and curator has got the title and reading right. Instead of sinkholes, it seems to me a subconscious desire to see them as flowers in our garden city. Unfortunately, the flowers have no colors. Each in its entirety, separate and mushrooming to be these centers of our major ethnic groups of Chinese, Malay and Indian, and what exists in between is seemingly just hollow space. Reality as such does not exist. In the face of what recently happened at the ARX5 and the infamous AGA affair in 1994, artists have been cautioned to work within certain boundaries. These incidents may have led us to more discussions about the do's and don'ts of critical art practice in Singapore. Unfortunately, the discussions hover desperately around the question of censorship and tend not to allow it to go further. No matter how one may try to reassure ourselves that every social structure has its boundaries, they all still have their own peculiarities. If we still cannot accept it and hate it, why should we tolerate it? We hate it and yet we love it because they say so much about ourselves. It's a narcissistic gaze in art is a mirror. It's like a narcissistic gaze in the art is a mirror idea which binds us. Perhaps one might get a different insight and see differently if we use art as a hammer or chanko or a discursive tool instead of just a mirror. At the time of the Artists' General Assembly, it was a celebratory event which turned sour. 2 people were charged and found guilty in the court of law. Since then, performance art and foreign theatre became taboo in Singapore. Whereas theatre groups could resort to various alternative practice in order to continue receiving their grants, performance artists will still be doing performance art, except that they have to call it something else in order to get a grant from the National Arts Council. It is interesting to note It is interesting to note, where is it now? Hey Nokia, shut up Nokia.
Nokia 99.
I printed this too small, you know.
You can't read, it's not my phone.
It is interesting to note that the post-Ulu, this current exhibition by the Artist Village, have uncovered that performance art events could still be held without the direct support of National Arts Council. Also earlier in this series of talks, returning scholar, PSC scholar and now trainee teacher, Felicia Loh had single-handedly made a performance in a public space, showing us that things could still be done if we go about it systematically through the bureaucratic processes of applying for permission or help from the relevant authorities like PELU, property owners and private funding bodies. If contemporary art in Singapore looks similar to American, it could be that we have some similarities as far as culture goes in terms of multiculturalism, blah blah blah, and at the same time in the thick of globalization. In fact, there are some who even say that all contemporary art look alike these days, hence shunning it for more traditional stuff to satisfy their nostalgia. Laments have been made of how every modern city look alike these days. However, these complaints come from those who look at art only as a landscape painting or picture of the skyline. If one were to take this view seriously, then you can just as well say that any city or contemporary art or culture, for that matter, look alike. Why is it that America has to be taken as the reference point? The Japanese curator who saw it that way also says something about what Japan is in relationship to Asian cultures. There has been an increase in the Japanese interest in Asian cultures recently. However, it is difficult to gauge how much is understood beyond an exotic gaze. Anything which is different in a way which includes some preconceived Asianness in terms of ethnicity is looked at in awe and wonder. Those that wish to put that aside and deal with the aesthetic, social or political issues are seen by some as an immature consciousness and dismissed for imitating the West. Another sign of perhaps America Eurocentric tunnel vision. Oh Han-ru, the curator for the Cities on the Move, defended the Chinese artists as not just using exotic elements of Chinese culture in their work, but adding a new vocabulary to contemporary art practice. I think he said this in the Asia Pacific Conference, but I couldn't find where I heard that. These are contentious points. However, I find it difficult to dwell alone with my own Chineseness being from Singapore, and perhaps I'm saying this not just talking about my work, but I think in general also referring to a lot of artists who always try to add the element of being Chinese or Malay or Indian in their work. I find it difficult to dwell alone with my own Chineseness being from Singapore, and perhaps not only that, but lately I felt that I have to go beyond just dealing with my identity as being someone from Singapore. I was once confronted by an artist from an African country that I should not make complicated this issue of identity. To her, I am simply a Chinese, and there is no other way about it. I tried to explain to her that it is not as simple as that. I am very much different from a Chinese from mainland China or Taiwan or Hong Kong or even America, etc. There is such a thing as a diaspora, and it does make a difference to one's identity. She refused to accept it. At the end of 2 or 3 weeks during that symposium where I met her, she still could not accept my explanation and came up to me on the last day during breakfast and said, "You are a Chinese. Full stop." It is sometimes things like that that make me feel that I need to keep on going this journey of a Yellow Man series, although each time I do it, I say it's the last time. But again, does not that kind of perception also say something about her identity as an African artist from a post-colonial state, trying very hard to make sense of this globalization which is affecting the younger generation, and which things are now making things unnecessarily too complicated. Even if we could convince people of our uniqueness as an individual, be it from China, Africa or Singapore, at the end of the day, we strive to define ourselves as in the values we see fit to be. But we do not exist in empty spaces, and neither do we exist without spaces. As such, we need our positions to stand on. However, there are some of these positions which would be deemed to be non-existing, or in certain contexts not allowed to exist. It's my existence, it's my resistance, it's my responsibility to be me. It's always been me. That's all. I keep it very short because I think what we want to do here is to create dialogue. And I'm not really having a conclusion here also, because I think that it's better to throw out this time for discussion later. At this point, I think, do you want to continue from here?
Okay lah, I'll continue. Yeah.
I think it's better that both of us present our thoughts and then we can have an open dialogue.
Whose video is it? Your video?
Yeah. What I've shown in the video is just in the beginning a walk from Sam, and then looking at the other art spaces as I go to Pelu to ask for permission for a license application form. And thereafter I played some of the performances from some festivals that I've been in other countries. Generally, I think it's just to show that there are works that may be possible to bring here in Singapore one day, or maybe saying that these things are happening everywhere, not only in Singapore or maybe around the region. And perhaps I also like to ask how we can bring this to Singapore. I mean, we've been doing these kind of festivals for a couple of years now. Maybe starting from the time that Artist Village began in 1989. But one of the things that I think that I want to highlight is that there is a difference between state initiatives and artist initiatives. It's a very different kind of impact or the way that things are done. So now over to Ken for his danger music. Danger music.
Oh.
Let's go.
You can take one.